Let me know. It feels kind of ridiculous. Okay. I was going to say, when I look on the screen, I can see my sunglasses as well as my reading glasses. So that's great. That's how we're doing it these days. 2 sets of glasses. Okay, so council colleagues, welcome. We are here, as you know, for a special meeting of council being convened on Monday, March 3rd at 5:38 p.m. And I will proceed to read our land acknowledgement. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation. I just want to recognize that we don't have Councillor Strachan with us. She was unavailable tonight and for much of this week. So we recognize that she's not here with us. That being said, I will look for an approval of the agenda. Colleagues, I think you understand that we are here to receive the report from Mr. John Mascarin. And with that, I will seek a mover and a seconder for agenda. Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Wilson. Any comments or questions, colleagues, on the agenda? Not seeing any. So I will call the vote. All in favor? Great. Thank you so much. Next is disclosures of interest. This is in regards to any item on the agenda this evening for which there may be a declaration of a perceived or real financial benefit or loss. Councillor Barkley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm declaring a conflict of interest regarding item I 1.1, as the item refers to an Integrity Commissioner report regarding my violation of the Code of Conduct.
Okay, great. And thank you. And I believe you will be leaving shortly.
Imminently?
Imminently. Okay, sounds
Right
good.
now?
And so with that, Ms. Preston or Ms. Remming, if you can remind us to bring Councillor Barkley back upon the conclusion of this report that is forthcoming, that would be great. Deputy Mayor, I note that while it's not mandatory that you leave, you are wishing to leave, so appreciate that. Though, of course, it is entirely at your discretion, so that is your call. So with that, we'll look for any other disclosures. I'm not seeing any other disclosures. So, of course, we do not have any presentations or delegations. So this evening's meeting is largely focused on not only, but largely focused on our report from Mr. Mascarin in regards to the closed meeting investigation. So I believe Mr. Mascarin is with us. So we'll hear from him and then we'll consider the recommendations, council colleagues. And I believe Ms. Preston will cue him up. I think, Mr. Mascarin, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
I can. All right. I think we're good to go. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Terrific. Good evening. Well, good afternoon, I suppose. Madam Mayor, members of council, my name is John Mascarin. I'm a partner with Airden Burles. I was the lead investigator on the closed meeting investigation report that you have in front of you this evening. Full disclosure to the public, this was also a matter that was discussed in camera as permitted under section 239 3 sub B of the Municipal Act. I provided a draft of the report, as is our standard practice, to council to consider. And Madam Mayor, you and the CAO were kind enough to invite me to the meeting, and I gave you a rundown of the report there and answered some questions. So I wanted to be very clear to the public who may be watching or listening in that this had been discussed in camera earlier. The closed meeting investigation report that you have in front of you right now relates to a closed meeting on October 22nd of 2024 that the municipality considered. The allegation was that the municipality, in it's consideration of one item, the Integrity Commissioner's report in the closed meeting on October 27th, contravene the open meeting rule in Ontario under Section 239 of the Municipal Act, as well as the procedural bylaw of the municipality. And you'll see right at paragraph 4, I'm giving it away. Upon conclusion of our investigation, we have found that the municipality, in fact, did contravene the open meeting rule and its procedure bylaw. It did so significantly in respect of one matter, and a number of additional technical breaches, that's what I'm referring to them, which are outlined in the report. So I'll just briefly run through the report. In case anyone is wondering, we weren't retained specifically by the municipality to undertake this investigation. The municipality had selected, as it's allowed to do, a delegated closed meeting investigator. That's Local Authority Services, which is an arm of AMO. We bid for the work 5 years ago and were awarded it through a public procurement process, and we've been reappointed by LAS to provide these services. The municipality's complaint, the complaint on the municipality's procedure was then referred to us, and I undertook to provide to take the investigation. You'll see that the investigation was properly filed with respect to a section 239.1. This was a provision that came into force in Ontario on January the 1st, 2008, where any person, not just an elector, not just a ratepayer, not a council member, any person can file a request that a closed meeting be investigated to see if it complies with the Municipal Act open meeting rules. The request came in and it fell within our jurisdiction. It raises two issues, and you'll see that those are outlined in paragraphs 11 and 12 of our report. The first, the request alleges that a member of council who was the respondent in the Integrity Commissioner's investigation, Deputy Mayor John Barclay, attended the closed meeting or was informed of the discussion at the closed meeting, and the request noted this raised concerns with respect to potential conflicts of interest and a lack of impartiality. I'll say it right now, there was no issue with respect to Deputy Mayor Barclay. He was actually entitled to attend the closed meeting, and he's entitled to attend today. I'm not sure why he's disclosed a pecuniary interest, but that's up to him. There's no pecuniary interest at play today with respect to my presentation. No sanctions can be imposed with respect to this, clearly not against the municipality nor against Councillor or Deputy Mayor Barclay. The second part of the request submitted that council voted and made a decision with respect to the IC report at the closed meeting. And at paragraph 13, you'll see that the request, I quoted it, it appears that council as a whole decided how to proceed with the Integrity Commissioner's report without bringing the matter into open session. This lack of transparency undermines the public trust and may not comply with the principles of open governance. So, Madam Mayor, members of council, my finding is that that part of the request is sustained. Council did make a decision in closed session in the absence of the public on something that it should have made and should have considered in an open public session for purposes of transparency, openness, and accountability, which is, in fact, part of the name of the section where the Code of Conduct appears in the Municipal Act. You'll see at the bottom of page 2 of my report, I set out the materials and inquiry process, the materials that I reviewed and the inquiry process that I undertook. You'll see the materials that I reviewed to consider the matter and some of the things that I did. On the top of the next page, you'll see that I did conduct a virtual interview with the CAO and the mayor of the municipality. We also interviewed the clerk, who was most helpful in assisting us with the investigation. The closed meeting was held on October the 22nd. Of material note, the clerk was not invited to attend this meeting. That is material because there were a number of significant issues with the way that the meeting was conducted, and it was important to note that the clerk was not invited to the meeting. The meeting had been proposed to go ahead with 4 items, but there was a 5th item that was added just the day before at the request of the mayor, and that included the Integrity Commissioner's report to be considered in a closed session. Now, I found this surprising, and I've said this later on, because there was an earlier Integrity Commissioner report on a code of conduct complaint, and there was no consideration of that matter in a closed session. The municipality had been through this process once before, but this time decided that it was going to do something different than what it had done the first time. And there was nothing wrong with the way the municipality handled it the first time in an open public session. That's in fact the way code of conduct matters and reports from the Integrity Commissioner are to be dealt with. The matter was included on the agenda for October 22nd. I'm sorry. It was one of 5 items. The items were clustered. They were put together, and there was a report. When the additional item was added, the clerk provided a notification of the matter to council on the 21st, and it was sent to all members of council, copied to the CAO. And I want to read from the top of page 4 of my report, where the clerk indicates that there was an additional item added. She writes, second paragraph, as a reminder for this item, it will rise to open session on November the 5th at the regular council meeting. All decisions and discussions about the recommendations contained within the report are to be conducted in an open session on November 5th. The required decisions that council are of council on this matter to be deliberated in open session are the following, and she sets out what should be there. And it also says, at this time, we have not asked the Integrity Commissioner to attend at the meeting on November the 5th. In fact, the Integrity Commissioner did not attend in closed session. The matter was led by the mayor, who was, of course, in charge of the agenda that day. The Integrity Commissioner report was a code of conduct complaint against the Deputy Mayor, John Barkley. There were 2 matters that the Integrity Commissioner looked at. One, did Deputy Mayor interfere with a procurement process? And the Integrity Commissioner did not have sufficient evidence to make a determination that he did. But on the second matter, the Integrity Commissioner found that the Deputy Mayor did actually demean and act not in accordance with the code of conduct with respect to the staff member, and therefore sustained the second ground of the report. The Integrity Commissioner made a finding which is conclusive, and with respect to that finding, the Integrity Commissioner made a recommendation that Deputy Mayor John Barkley be reprimanded formally by council. The matter was dealt with in a closed session, and the confidential closed meeting notes were provided to me. I requested that they be provided. The CAO, I commend her, did disclose them, and it was very clear from those notes that council made a decision. This is contrary to the open meeting rule and section 239(6), where council is not entitled to make decisions in an in-camera session. So that is the significant issue with the matter. But it was compounded by the way council then determined to bring forward the matter to the open meeting, where the integrity commissioner in his report was very clear that decisions had to be made in an open session. And what council did is made a decision in closed session to put it on the consent agenda for the open meeting on November 5th. Now, this is extraordinary because the procedure bylaw for the municipality does not even have the permissions to have a consent agenda. In our investigation, we had found that the clerk had recommended updates to the procedure bylaw, which I understand have been underway. But at the time that this was put forward, the consent agenda process did not actually exist. I understand from my interviews with the mayor, the CAO, and the clerk that this had become a practice or a custom that the municipality had taken on during COVID, and yet it wasn't allowed in the procedure bylaw. So, if anyone does not know, matters go on a consent agenda, and we were told that typically matters go on a consent agenda when they're administrative in nature and there should be no discussion of the matter. Again, this is extraordinary for an integrity commissioner report to be on a consent agenda, because the whole purpose of having it in an open session is for council to act as a quasi-judicial body to make a decision in full view of the public, so the public can hear and discern what is happening. And that's not what happened in this case. It was put on the consent agenda. The mayor was very clear that there was no attempt to bury the report. If you read my report, I think I come to a different conclusion. So the matter was not discussed. It was not debated, nor was it deliberated upon in the open meeting. And that comes to the two questions that I had to look at. And this is at the top of page 6. So 2 questions that were raised. Was the deputy mayor entitled to attend the closed session? Yes, he was. I found that there was, when I reported on this, a number of people were quite surprised by this. I believe that there's been a lack of training and education provided to the municipality. And it appears that there isn't an understanding of members of council when they should declare a pecuniary interest. I'll give you an example. This evening, Deputy Mayor Barkley disclosed that he had a conflict of interest. That's not what you're supposed to do. The question is whether you have a pecuniary interest. What is the nature and the general nature thereof? So it appears to be a bit of a misunderstanding here. The deputy mayor was entitled to attend the closed session. He didn't, but he was entitled to do so, and he's entitled to participate in the discussions on an IC report. The only thing that a member who is under investigation cannot do is vote on the matter. The second question was, did council vote contrary to subsection 239 sub 6 of the Municipal Act with respect to the Integrity Commissioner's report? And the answer is unequivocally yes. The questions that I posed to both the CAO and the mayor was there a vote? Both of them indicated there was no formal vote, but it is very clear that the reaching of a consensus at a meeting is akin to a vote, and it's dealt with as a vote. So council did clearly breach the a section 239 sub 6, the open meeting rule, that allows council to consider matters in a closed session. It doesn't allow council to make decisions on matters in closed session unless they're giving direction to staff or to agents of the municipality, neither of which was at play in this case. So very clearly, the system that's been set up in Ontario is that integrity commissioner reports, council must deal with those in an open public session because they are acting as a quasi-judicial body, an adjudicative body. This has been made very clear by the Ontario Divisional Court in a case called Shirelli versus Ottawa. And that must be the open hearing principle in Ontario, is those decisions must be made in an open public session. That was not followed in this particular case. So that is the main substantive issue and finding that we determined in our report. It is set out in our report in the findings section. There are a number of technical contraventions. I will not spend an undue amount of time on them. Some are very minimal, but there are 11 of them. That's a significant number of contraventions. There was the inaccurate closed meeting exception that was cited, and admittedly, this might have been a typo. The education and training session was conducted as part of a training session, but as part of other matters at a closed meeting. And the law is very clear that an education and training session can only be dealt with on a standalone basis, not as part of another meeting, a closed meeting. Has to be a separate basis. And that is made absolutely clear in the Municipal Act because there's a separate section, 239 3.1, that authorizes that. There is an incomplete resolution to convene into a closed meeting. There also is no authority for the consent agenda, which I've mentioned before. There is a lack of a formal reprimand of the member. This was curious because council accepted the Integrity Commissioner's report, which recommended a formal reprimand of Deputy Mayor Barkley. When we reviewed the records, there is no formal reprimand anywhere that's been set out. So that is one of our recommendations. There's a failure to maintain proper records of the meeting. This is set out at page 16 of our report and the reasons why there. There is a note made, which is a comment on the council members received the report as, quote, a lesson learned. That's improper record keeping. There's a failure to record the declaration of pecuniary interest in the minutes. Now, I'm not faulting the clerk here. Deputy Mayor John Barkley declared an interest in the matter, and then at the closed session, and then in the open meetings, he declared a conflict. Once again, if you're declaring a pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, you must set out what type of pecuniary interest it is and the general nature thereof. And that's set out in those pages. So, my ultimate summary, and this is found on page 17 of the report, and I'll read from paragraphs 109 and 110. While it may not have been the intent of the members to do so, council breached the open meeting rule in section 239 by having made a substantive decision with respect to the recommendations of the Integrity Commissioner without doing it in an open meeting of council. Therefore, we concur with the requester that this lack of transparency undermines public trust and fails to adhere to the principles of open and accountable government. The whole intent of the Integrity Commissioner system is for the Integrity Commissioner to publicly report on their findings and to have council make a decision as an administrative tribunal so that the public is aware of why they're making the decision that they're making. And this was not done in this particular case. Paragraph 110, the actions of council give rise to a public perception that it sought to circumvent the open meeting rule so that it could deal with an ethical matter related to one of its own members in the absence of the public. And as I indicated, this was compounded by council's decision to include the IC report as part of the consent agenda for the public meeting. Now, if you read my report, you will see that it was offered that there was an opinion provided that council could do this. Now, this is curious. Why would council need to seek an opinion from its legal counsel that this could be done? The very question begs the answer there. In fact, there was no written opinion provided, and I've seen, or I've heard, because there was no written opinion, I've heard what the verbal opinion was, and it's not what someone may have led me to believe what it was. Any reasonable person would have a justifiable belief that council did not want this matter to be aired in public. So my recommendations, council, are set out in paragraph 111. Council and senior staff should receive comprehensive training on the open meeting rule, because I feel that there's a misunderstanding as to what council can actually do at a closed meeting. The municipality shall update its procedure bylaw, and I believe after I've written this that council has made efforts to proceed with it. I'm not sure at what point they're at. Council and all committees shall strive to have the clerk or the secretary attend all meetings. I believe that council may have gone offside here by not inviting the clerk to attend the closed meeting. She had given prior written notice to all members of council as to what they should have done. And again, I find it stretches credulity to believe that every single member of council did not read that and understand what the clerk was telling them. Council shall issue a formal public reprimand to the deputy mayor within 30 days, and the municipality should create a accountability page on its website to house all accountability reports, including closed meeting investigation reports like this one, any ombudsman reports, and as well as any IC reports. The report was provided to council on February 5th, a draft of it. Council did consider it at a closed meeting on February the 11th. I did not receive any written statements, any written comments, but I was asked to attend a meeting with the mayor and the CAO subsequently, where they brought new information to light that I had not been made available, not been made aware of in my prior meetings with them or interviews with them, nor at with council's meeting on February the 11th. I was asked to review the report because the facts did not fairly represent what had happened. I did review the matter. I conducted a further interview, and my view is that it accurately describes and provides an absolutely accurate and fair representation of the facts. So we did not alter the report. As closed meeting investigator, I have discretion under the Municipal Act to disclose such matters that I feel are appropriate to disclose in this matter. As I've indicated, I found a breach of the open meeting rule, and I felt for the public reporting that certain facts had to be disclosed in the report. Typically, things that are discussed in closed meeting remain in the closed meeting, and those are at council's discretion to disclose, except when an integrity commissioner, a closed meeting investigator, and some other accountability officer provides a report, and they are entitled at their discretion to disclose such information that they believe are important for the purposes of the report, to bring some intelligibility, transparency, and understanding as to why the report reached the conclusions that it did. This report has been prepared for and is forwarded to council for its consideration. As I've indicated, there are a number of recommendations. There are 5 of them, And subsection 239(2) sub 12 of the Municipal Act requires that council pass a resolution stating how it intends to address the report. The report also is to be made available to the public. Madam Mayor, that is the conclusion of my presentation on the report, and I will stand down and be pleased to take any questions that you or any member of council may have. And thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Mr. Mascaron. We appreciate your fulsome report. And as you noted, we did invite you to come into close. So as a council, we could better understand aspects of the act that unfortunately weren't as apparent to us as they are now. So clearly this has been an excellent learning opportunity. So I'll just, obviously given the substance of that exchange, council colleagues, I'll just look to either Councillor Sullivan or Councillor Wilson for any questions. I would like to note that Deputy Mayor made his own decision to absent himself from this portion of this meeting. Obviously, every council member has the discretion to do that. I certainly accept, Mr. Mascaron, that perhaps that's not something that was required or mandated, but certainly that was Deputy Mayor's decision. So we need to obviously recognize that that was his call. So Councillor Wilson.
Thank you through you, Mayor Peckford. Just for clarity, I just listening to the report. I just want to clarify the closed meeting that you had with us, Council. Was that February 10th or February 11th? Because I didn't attend anything on the 11th of February. I came in virtually on the 10th. Thank you.
I'm sorry if that's the question to me. I put the 11th. I thought that's the date that I attended. If it was the 10th, then I apologize. I was reading the report. I can't remember off the top, and I wrote the 11th.
So we're just confirming with Ms. Preston, because she was obviously also present for all of that meeting alongside her deputy, or CEO, who also functions as a deputy clerk, I might note. So we have both our clerk and our deputy clerk there, and Ms. Preston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Mascaron, I do acknowledge that the date of the meeting was February 10th.
Okay, so we'll make sure that that's corrected in the record. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you through you, Mayor Peckford. I just wanted it to be corrected through the record, as you have stated. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, anything else? Of course, with Councillor Strachian not here this evening and Deputy Mayor having absented himself from this part of the agenda, we just have one remaining councillor here. Councillor Sullivan, anything you'd like to add? Okay. So with that, Mr. Mascaron, I know that this evening we are going to deal with certainly your recommendations and also I think address the opportunity for a reprimand. So I'm going to look to council colleagues to move and second certainly the recommendations. Again, from my perspective, having served this municipality for many, many years, I believe that this has been an instructive and informative process. And Mr. Mascaron, you're obviously such a seasoned municipal expert in this arena. I think it was clear that in our conversations with you, both at the interview stage and with all of council, we've learned a great deal. From my perspective, our intention has and always will be to serve our community with integrity. On behalf of council, I certainly regret clearly that we misstepped in the process of seeking to adopt the recommendations last fall from the Integrity Commissioner with respect to the Deputy Mayor. And certainly for that, I apologize. I can say from my perspective, and I can only speak for myself, that there was no intention to go offside of the act, despite Mr. Mascaron's conclusions. It is what it is at this stage. And what's most important is I think we're extremely eager to learn from this process. What we recognize is it's not atypical for councils to meet in closed, but certainly this is the first time that our council has encountered this particular issue. In addition to Mr. Mascaron, I would like to thank staff, in particular our clerk, Ms. Preston, who's been involved for their understanding and responsiveness. I know to reduce the possibility of this sort of error again, Council has already undertaken some additional training, and more training is ahead this spring for Council and senior staff. Certainly in my discussions with Mr. Mascaron, what became evident is while there is counties-wide trainings that we have undertaken in the past, and I have, we recognize that more specific and focused training for our own municipality would be very beneficial. The Act is changing a lot. It's a complex Act. And as a dynamic and very busy municipality and a very busy council, I think this is imperative. So I'm very grateful to our CEO and our clerk for undertaking already some of the efforts required to get that training to us, and not just for ourselves, for senior staff. And I know Mr. Mascaron notes in the report that Ms. Preston was not in our meeting on October 22nd, and indeed that was the case. But we did have our CEO, who functions as a deputy clerk, in the room, and that had been typical of some of our training and education sessions. That being said, I think we've learned how to better distinguish various closed items and also fully utilize, the services of our clerk. And again, another, I think, important learning for this council. So with that, I don't know if there's anything else, colleagues. I know that Mr. Mascaron is with us. His time is limited. I think he was here to ensure that we could ask any further questions of him. Again, having had a fairly fulsome discussion in close, which is allowable under the Act for the purposes of this report, we obviously had multiple opportunities to clarify certain matters when it comes to the Municipalities Act, and in particular closed meetings. So I don't know if there's anything else, council colleagues, before I look for a mover and a seconder for consideration of the recommendations. Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have one other question, and through you to Mr. Mascaron. In paragraph 96, you talk about the municipality's procedure bylaw not making any reference to consent agendas. I recall that the consent agenda, use of a consent agenda piece in our regular council meetings came in under the direction and the suggestion of our previous CAO, who was with us, I'd say, since just the beginning of the pandemic, and he initiated the use of a consent agenda. So at that time, I gather the municipal procedure bylaw should have been amended to include that consent agenda, which obviously wasn't. So if it's included in the new procedural bylaw for North Grenville, then is it appropriate for us to continue to have items on a consent agenda?
We'll go to Mr. Mascaron. I presume so. I think that was the outcome of our discussion a little while ago. But Mr. Mascaron?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Peckford, to the councillor. Yes, the municipality must have a procedure bylaw for governing the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings. So at the time, if you went to a form of consent agenda during COVID, then the procedure bylaw ought to have been amended at that time to reflect that you were having that system put in place. Otherwise, it's not there, and you've been using it, and it was a little baffling to me when I looked up to see, well, what can they put on consent agenda? And I couldn't find any reference of it in your procedure bylaw. So if you put it in now, you're allowed to have that. Council is pretty much the master of its own process, provided that it sets out the ground rules in a procedure bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much. We were just taking the direction of who we believe to be on good authority. Thank you.
And certainly, I think, with the, we've had the first reading of our procedure bylaw refresh, if you will, but understand from Ms. Preston as of last year, when she brought to our attention the need to significantly update our procedure bylaw, that we've now completed a first reading. The clerk's office had already done a lot of the heavy lifting on updating the bylaw, but quite frankly, there was a lot to update. Unfortunately, to your point, Councillor Sullivan, even when certain new procedures were being adopted, they hadn't been fully reflected in the procedure bylaw. So we've had the first reading, and we expect second and third readings later this month into early April. So I think we'll have our new procedure bylaw fully in effect, certainly later this spring. And clearly, that doesn't speak just to consent agendas. That has a suite of measures in them that go well beyond consent agenda, but certainly allow council and the municipality to ensure that we're fully in alignment with some of the other processes and procedures in place. Ms. President, is there anything else you want to add in terms of the procedure bylaw?
No, I think you've summarized it, Madam Mayor, that we definitely took an overhaul approach to start from scratch, and that the current procedure bylaw in its first reading and its upcoming second reading reflects procedures that are undertaken now by council and may become a fluid document as council's procedures may change in the coming future as well.
Thank you. And, one of the other things I think I've learned through this is, Mr. Mascaron, and we had this discussion closed, we treated this first complaint, the Integrity Commissioner report, differently than one we had dealt with previously. And by virtue of having a municipal staff person sort of involved or implicated, mentioned in this more recent complaint, I think we thought there were sensitivities in regards to human resourcing that would enable us to have a fulsome meeting enclosed. We've learned, in fact, that it is the process is the same, no matter whether or not we're dealing with a complaint that implicates a municipal staff person or not. So that was a good learning for me as well. So I think the procedure bylaw will help us to fully understand the parameters of our own processes. And again, obviously our work with you has been so incredibly helpful. So appreciate that you've given this such serious and fulsome attention. We know that's your job, and individuals like you are certainly rare, given how much you bring to the table. So we are grateful for your expertise, and I think we should get on with the matter of, accepting the recommendations, council colleagues, unless there's anything else. I don't see any hands, so Mr. Mascaron, you're obviously welcome to stay for the bulk of our meeting, but I think certainly our need to have you answer any questions has come to an end.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to present this evening, and I thank you for those kind comments that you made, and I wish you the best going forward. Thank you.
Take care. All the best. So with that, council colleagues, again, just the three of us this evening, the matter of the recommendations is now before us. It is at council's discretion what we accept as recommendations, but obviously I think they are good ones, and they're practical for us to consider at this time. So the recommendations are that council and senior staff shall receive comprehensive training on the open meeting rule as set out in Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 from a qualified and experienced third party within 60 days of the receipt of this report. So, and I think I can confirm, Ms. Dunlop, Ms. Preston, that training is the process of setting up that training is now well underway. Is that the case? Okay. The municipality should update its procedure bylaw at its earliest opportunity. Absolutely. I believe that that is proceeding, and we look forward to having our new bylaw in place. Council and all committees shall strive to include the clerk at all of their meetings, recognizing that there may be some limited occasions when it may not be appropriate for the clerk to attend a closed meeting. So certainly I think that's a sage recommendation. As noted, we did have a deputy clerk in the room. That was our CAO, but we certainly accept that in matters, I think, around Integrity Commissioner reports, certainly it makes all kinds of sense for the clerk to be there, and I think that's certainly a good best practice moving forward. So I would hope, colleagues, that you would accept that recommendation. Fourth is that council shall issue a formal public reprimand to Deputy Mayor Barclay within 30 days of the receipt of this report. And I think I'm going to ask colleagues, council colleagues, to consider the reprimand this evening. So I have something prepared that allows us to fulfill that recommendation. The municipality shall create an accountability page on its website to list pertinent information related to the municipality's accountability officers and any reports that have been submitted to council. And again, I think this is a useful recommendation. I think I had assumed that some of the information around our integrity commissioner and our ombudsman and other officers, if you will, was already readily available. But if we can make it more explicit for the public, certainly something that I think would be a value add. And be it resolved that council formally reprimand deputy mayor, but we'll do that reprimand as a second, as sort of a secondary consideration after we get through those recommendations. So I've read the 5 recommendations. Council colleagues, with just Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Wilson in the room, if you wouldn't mind moving and seconding consideration. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So that is now formally on the table. Do you have any comments or questions in regards to the recommendations? Okay. So with that, then I will call the vote, please. All in favor? All right. Obviously, that carries. And next, I can move on to the reprimand itself. And I believe, just to be clear, Ms. Preston, does Deputy Mayor need to be here for the reprimand? Yes, he does. So we have to call him back.
We can call him back.
Okay,
Yes, Madam
great.
Mayor.
So if someone could grab Mr. If we could just ensure he comes back into council chambers. I think the other thing, Ms. Preston, in addition to our procedure bylaw, this evening we will be dealing with a little later report from the Ombudsman, correct? On the process by which we identify an integrity commissioner.
That's correct, Madam Mayor. We have received correspondence from the Ombudsman's office for which we are required to receive it. It was originally on a previous agenda, but we thought it best to receive it this evening so that we can have a fulsome discussion and perhaps provide additional direction to staff for considerations.
Okay, excellent. So welcome back, Deputy Mayor. I should note that Mr. Mascarin did not feel it necessary for you to leave the room. In fact, felt that perhaps it was excessive and advises that on matters of declaration of conflict, we receive further training. So clearly training is underway. We've accepted all of the recommendations and we are eager to get that supplementary training. Many members of council did attend a regionally organized training led by the clerks. It was hosted here at the municipality. It was in mid to late January. It was very informative, and I think certainly we found it quite beneficial. So it, in some respects, will be a continuation of that conversation. We have identified a couple of individuals who, again, much like Mr. Mascarin, are very seasoned, bring a lot of insight to the table. So that'll be very useful. So, council colleagues, now I'll move on to the consideration of the motion in regards to the deputy mayor's reprimand. And I know Mr. Mascarin has obviously pointed out that this was a reprimand that we should have provided shortly after we accepted the integrity commissioner's recommendations, albeit on consent, which wasn't the right mechanism, so we recognize that. But the reprimand should have been delivered shortly after we had accepted the integrity commissioner's recommendations. So I'm now going to ask Councillor Wilson and Councillor Sullivan to consider the following. Be it resolved that council formally reprimand Deputy Mayor John Barclay as recommended in the Integrity Commissioner report dated October 2nd, based on a finding that the Deputy Mayor inappropriately communicated about a member's staff and served to demean and falsely injure their professional and ethical reputation, contrary to the Code of Conduct for members of council. Council hereby denounces the deputy mayor's actions. Council expects that he and all members will strictly adhere to proper and professional standards of behavior when interacting with staff as set out in the code of conduct. So, colleagues, I will look to a mover and a seconder for the reprimand, and certainly Councillor Wilson, Councillor Sullivan. So, any comments on the reprimand itself? I'm not seeing any. Excellent. And with that, I will call the question. All in favor? All right. So that carries. So thank you to Ms. Preston and our CEO for helping us to navigate these waters, which are relatively new, certainly for council. And while I know Mr. Mascarin certainly suggested that there was an intent to bury, I can say unequivocally, it certainly was not our intention, but by virtue of the mechanisms we utilized at the time, obviously the outcome was not proper, and we really look forward to improving our processes, because as a council, I don't think that this is certainly a situation we want to find ourselves in again. And we have too many wonderful things happening at this municipality for us to be offside with the Municipalities Act. So with that, I think we're going to move on to the report from the Ombudsman, which was in part sort of a secondary effect of this investigation, and also highlighted perhaps a nuance in terms of how we select our integrity commissioner. So Ms. Preston, I think you're going to present that report?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. In the package this evening, there was correspondence that is included in the agenda, that was received from the Ombudsman's office, which suggests some recommendations for council to consider with regards to its appointment of an integrity commissioner. As council is aware, an integrity commissioner is a required officer of the municipality, and our current integrity commissioner has been appointed as Tony Fleming, who also acts as one of the municipal solicitors for the municipality of North Grenville. The correspondence speaks to some recommendations and best practices that the Ombudsman of Ontario has set forth for the selection of the integrity commissioners. And this was subsequent after council's original selection of Tony, following the enaction of that respective portion of the legislation. So as council is aware, Tony has been acting as the municipal integrity commissioner since the requirement for that selection to be in place, which was earlier in 2019, I believe. And so recently council extended the contract for the integrity commissioner just last fall for a period of 37 months that would bring the integrity commissioner appointment into the new council's prerogative so that they might select a new integrity commissioner. However, this letter obviously does speak to some perhaps best practices that council may decide to undertake. The requirement this evening is to receive the correspondence from the Ombudsman's office. However, council might undertake further direction to staff to provide an additional report with options about the suggestions and recommendations that are provided within this letter, so that council might make a fulsome decision at a later time about how we might review our current appointment of the integrity commissioner and the options that are available to council to select one prior to the fulfillment of the current contract.
Great, thank you. And I would note, I think we've been well served by the integrity commissioner. Currently, he does a lot of work across Eastern Ontario, Mr. Fleming. That being said, in light of this concern or this recommendation for a best practice, we will need to look at council whether or not we wish to appoint a different integrity commissioner for matters moving forward. So I think I see that we have a recommendation that council accept the letter this evening from the Ontario Ombudsman dated January 24th, and that council, for your consideration, council, an additional component to that recommendation is that council directs staff to return an options report regarding the suggestions within the letter from the Ontario Ombudsman related to the appointment of the integrity commissioner for the municipality. And I'll look for a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. So
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, are you moving it?
Yes, I'll move.
I'll just look for a seconder. Councillor Wilson? Yep. Okay, go ahead. Oh, you're just moving it. Okay, so any questions, colleagues? Again, I think this is perhaps a newer best practice. So it's not something that's come to light in the past, but obviously council will at least have the opportunity in a future meeting to decide who should play that role for us. And I think it is at our discretion, but obviously we will accept good advice from informed individuals such as the Ombudsman. So if they have a particular concern, I'm sure that we'll be eager to identify a different integrity commissioner. So, but it will have to come back to council for a decision of this body in the future. So the recommendations on the table, motion has been moved. Any questions or comments? None? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you very much. And with that, I don't believe we have any other business this evening. Okay. I do want to remind anyone watching, of course, that we are about to embark upon our very fulsome municipal budget presentations shortly. We do have a fulsome and first presentation of the 2025 municipal budget. And I know staff have been working exceedingly hard on getting a package ready for us for tomorrow. And then we have a first meeting, public meeting, a virtual meeting on Wednesday, March 5th, thank you, and another one just after spring break. So if you want to learn more about the budget, both tomorrow and Wednesday represent very good opportunities. And we expect a final version of the budget to come before council on the 19th. I'll look then, if there's no other business, I'll look for the introduction and consideration of bylaws. I do not believe we have any this evening. Any questions from those in the room? Members of the public, members of our community, staff, not seeing any. Then, and nothing online, Ms. Preston? Okay, so then we would go to close of our meeting. And council colleagues, you know that we have an education and training session in closed following this meeting to ensure that we have all the information at our disposal moving forward and are properly equipped and properly trained. So just a reminder to go upstairs for that portion of our meeting, which will be a separately convened meeting using all the right protocols so that all of this good learning with Mr. Mascarin doesn't go astray. So I'll look for the confirmation bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw 2125 to confirm proceedings of council at its first special meeting held on March 3rd, 2025 be adopted and passed. Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Wilson, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And also be it resolved that this special meeting of council adjourn at 6:34 p.m. I'll look to Deputy Mayor Barkley, thank you, and Councillor Wilson for a seconder. And I will call the question. All in favor? Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And we're going to adjourn this meeting.